Good evening, everybody. This beautiful evening, following this stunning, wonderful day. I want to tell you about a meeting that I just came from. For the last 4 days, I've been at the American Zen Teacher Association meeting. There were about 35 teachers from sanghas all over the country and from a number of different lineages, including a couple of Chinese Chan Zen lineages. So because of that, we all teach a little differently, depending on what we inherited from our teachers. We're all drawn to different teachers according to our temperament. So it's always very interesting to get together with a bunch of teachers. It's also really intense. You know, for 4 days, there's a lot of really earnest sharing about content of teaching, method of teaching, issues and problems in teaching. And it was stunningly wonderful. I mean, the people, this was an incredible group of people, most of whom have been teaching for many, many years. There was a fairly new teacher. She's only been at it for 3 years. I mean, she's been practicing for 20, but she's only been teaching for 3. So it was very stimulating. And mostly what we were coming to do was to talk about transition and succession, because many of the people there are in are varying stages of process of handing over their teaching to their successors. How successors are chosen, how sanghas deal with the transition. It was very, very, very thorough treatment, and I was invited to be on the panel of one of the types of transition. So it was my teachers at the monastery were the kind of the monastic container transitioning, and then I kind of represented the non-residential training centers. And transition is not just change. You know, transition, when we talk about change, we talk pretty much about outcome. But when we're talking about transition and succession, we're talking about process. The process that we undertake to transition in a way that maintains the integrity of the teaching, the integrity of the sangha, and really protects sangha relationships. Because it has been, in the past, it's been accompanied by tremendous upheaval. Some of that was because of sudden and unanticipated deaths, and there were a couple of people there who came into their teaching responsibility because of very sudden and unexpected death of their teacher, or because a teacher has been kicked out because of malfeasance of some sort, which is definitely true of what happened in Buddhism when some of the first teachers came over here from other cultures and didn't understand, we didn't understand, they didn't understand the cultural meanings of various behaviors. So I don't know how closely any of you followed those I don't even know what to call them, but it was big messes. But we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot from that. And that's what I propose we are about to do, just as from the very beginning of Sangha Jewel Zen Center, which used to just be Corvallis Zen Circle. Before we had a place, we had a Sunday sit for like 20 years. And it was very simple. You know, the jobs that people had were set up in the morning, because we were at the yoga center, we had to put everything out. And then at the end, we had to put it all back, right? And that was pretty much it. And then we moved here, and there was all kinds of group process that we needed to figure out how we were going to do this, how we were going to align with kind of the traditional training positions that serve the Sangha in various ways. Like Shuso is head of Zendo and in charge of a lot of things in relation to the formal practice here. You know, then we have chant leader, we have Makugyo player, we have a board. There are all kinds of positions, and our Sangha is run, you know, kept. We are organized and administered by kind of 3 layers. Well, there's me, the teacher, the senior teacher. Then there are the elders, who are 5 members of our Sangha who've been practicing a very long time, and I know them well, and I trust them to be able to respond to any questions that come up in a way that's really in keeping with the teachings. And they know themselves pretty well too, so that's a big part of transmitting the Dharma. You really have to understand your own processes, your own projections, your own particular limits in order to be reliable as a source for Dharma teaching. So we have the elders, we have the board, and there are 7 people on the board at this point who are really responsible for all of the legal and financial doings of the Sangha. And now that we have property, that's much more elaborate than it used to be, certainly. And then we have the program committee, which meets and decides on the programming of the offerings that we have. And there are so many different people who participate in this, and all of you contribute in various ways. And the most important part of the center is the practice together. So as we go through a change, we want to attend very carefully to the process in a way that will really serve the outcome of moving into another phase of our life as a Sangha. And what this is about is bringing in assistant teachers. So this is one of many talks that I'll be giving, and this theme is going to be unfolding very actively for the next 6 months until we're kind of settling into the new forms that are going to be offered. You know, one of the 3 marks of existence is change, impermanence. No avoiding it. Every moment it's going on. And sometimes in a group, we kind of go along, you know, and if you've been on the inner workings of this Sangha, you know that there have been changes all along going on. We're always tending to that. But we're going to now come into having 2 assistant teachers offering a lot more programming. And probably we will see an increase in membership. We're anticipating that will probably be true. So we've been a very intimate Sangha, and the hope is we will continue to manage ourselves so that will be so. As we go through this time of very obvious change, and we want to do it in a way that minimizes our suffering. But there's the suffering of change. And I am asking all of you to be thinking about what are the things for you that are really difficult about change. And to take that on as practice. That becomes part of our practice. It's very easy to settle into a very comfortable nest. But this Dharma teaching is not about nesting comfortably. It's lovely to be able to do that, but it is not a permanent situation. It just isn't. It's not in accord with how things go. So we want to be able to allow this time of change to help it be dynamic, to be creative, to be stimulating, and helping us all even more deeply engage our lives. And some people will become much more involved in the running of the center. Other people will not so much. I mean, that's the way it's always going, right? So in transition, so change is really more about the outcome, but transition is really more about the process and the inner psychological process that we go through as we internalize and come to terms with the new situation, the new teachers. They're really different from me. Most of you have met Soten and Shanae, right? And you know, they're like 50 years younger and that much more energetic. Very, very different in their interests and their experience. So at this meeting, Bancho Green, who is now in the process of training as the future abbot of Great Vow Zen Monastery, Bancho and Jomon. And Jomon has visited us and will actually be giving a Dharma talk here and leading a retreat shortly. But Bancho, who before he moved into full-time spiritual practice, was one of the heads of the what's it called? One of the big unions in this country. He's a big, and you never know it, he's a very modest, very sweet human being, but really understands the process of groups, which is very, very wonderful. Anyway, he gave a great introduction at the beginning of this meeting to transition, based on a small book that came out 30 years ago by William Bridges called Transitions. Is anybody here familiar with that book? That's a terrific book. And it's not complicated. He talks about the different aspects of transition, which begins with endings. Something comes to an end. Then there's a gap. There's a neutral zone. And then there's beginning, the next, right? And he charged us all with referring to that very basic way of thinking about change to guide our considerations. So endings are all about what we're losing, what's passing out of being, what we're afraid of losing, what we actually are not going to have anymore, and what we're afraid we're not going to have anymore, and what is going to be left behind. And so there are fears about new teachers coming in, especially who are younger and are much older, right? So anybody who's been working with me for a while might be concerned about not having access to the usual source for teaching. I'm going to be around a while, by the way. One of the things that fortunately we have the luxury of being able to take our time about this transition. But I want to say I am getting old, and I can feel it, and I can feel the lessening of my energy, and this work is very. It's not a 9-to-5 kind of a commitment. It's a way of life. And so bringing teachers in who are younger and who are earlier in their careers really will benefit the Dharma. So when we begin practice for ourselves. And then after a while, we practice for the Sangha. And then eventually we practice for the Dharma. And so one of the vows that anybody who's a transmitted teacher commits to, takes on, is the vow to do everything that we can to be sure that the Dharma keeps going, the Dharma teachings. We're in a tradition, a lineage tradition, goes back 3,000 years, person by person. This transition has happened over and over and over and over again. And it's wonderful. It's really wonderful, and it's one of the things that, even if we're not directly aware of it, I think we all sense the profundity of what we are receiving in this practice. It's the wisdom of many, 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 many generations and many lives and many mistakes. Every disaster and mistake has been made. And we will continue to. But the Dharma keeps going. So, endings. So are you aware of any concerns you have about the transition? Is anybody aware of any concerns? Briefly?
Very briefly, it's the young versus old. Age, and age-wise, not so much an experience with age. How do I relate to someone that's in their, early 30s?
No, actually, they're both 40.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah.
So early 40s?
Yeah.
And me being how old I am?
Yeah. And that's also their concern. How do they relate to people in the role of teacher who are much older, students who are older? And that's one of the wonderful explorations that we engage together. In case we think that ever the teacher, the teaching goes in only one way, no, it's always equally beneficial in every direction. So that's one of the concerns. Yeah.
I find myself worrying about accessibility issues and whether young, healthy, athletic people will be as aware of the different needs, not just for me, but for others, for accommodation and adjustment for physical needs.
That's a very real concern. And one of the beauties of bringing in young teachers who have spent many years at the monastery is that has always been something that has had to be worked with. So they're very aware of that. Yeah. One more concern, anybody?
Compatibility or?
Compatibility. Yeah, whether it's going to be a match. It's true. One of the things that's true of, at this meeting, everybody was saying, you have a group for a period of time and everybody has come. There's a karmic connection you have with everybody. And people have come through and they say, no, you're not my teacher. And they keep going to somebody who feels a little bit more like a better fit. That's true. And if there's not a lot of trauma around the transition, there still are always a few people who leave because of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's it's a concern, yeah. So then, the neutral time, the in-between time, when what used to be isn't happening anymore, and actually that doesn't pertain to the offerings, because we're going to continue to offer what we've been offering. We're just adding a number of other things. But it can feel different, and it can feel very different with different leadership. So on the Sunday nights that I'm not giving the Dharma talk, I might be here, I might not be here, but the whole feel of the place will be different with a different teacher, right? So that's the in-between time before everything feels normal again. For a while it won't feel normal. There's confusion about roles. Who do you go to? Who do you speak to about what? And everybody will be in the same boat with that. And we'll just work on it. One of the most important parts of this transition is good communication. So here's where the pure teachings of Dharma are the unconditioned is clearly having to reckon with all of the conditions, right? So we're really focusing on what are the conditions and how to most wisely, creatively, kindly, flexibly work with them. So the essence of life takes place in the neutral zone, actually, all the time. It's always in process. It's in this interim spaciousness that all possibilities and creativity and innovation of ideas comes to life and flourishes. So this kind of gap, we're always in a gap in our life, but sometimes it's just much more obvious. And then after a while, we get a feel for how it is. It's like, oh, okay, all right, we're chugging. We figured some stuff out. This feels good. We've identified problems. We've worked with them. We've gained confidence in our ability to speak to each other about the things that aren't working and to figure out what's needed. So so there's the endings, the neutral zone, and beginnings. So there's in this book on transitions, there's a list of what you really have to pay attention to in the neutral zone. Communicating with the organization about why the change is needed. I'm old. But, one of the things that was so striking was at this meeting, the question was, well, when are you going to retire? And just about everybody said, well, what do you mean by retire? Because when you're a person of the way and you have been functioning in relation to it like this, it has been so central to the way life is lived, there is no retiring from it, but the venue can change, and certainly the role in relation to the community changes. Then the second thing is collecting information by those affected by the change to understand its impact on them. We're always listening. And there will be, we're going to do a council process periodically where everybody can come together and just talk about how it is for you. It's really important to be talking about it. Everybody, not just, you don't have to be in a role particularly, just part of the Sangha. We're looking into what's called transition readiness, and this is part of it. It's really, calling the fact that we are going to be entering a big new phase. And then really having the leaders tune into what we're going to be called on to be sensitive about, to take note of, and to address. It's all practice. It's all practice. Just like all the time. Our whole life is practice. Do you know what of the three stages of transition you are most vulnerable about, you have the hardest time with? It can be really interesting. Are you really good at beginnings, but not very good with endings, and definitely not good with gaps? Do you kind of disappear from some arrangement rather than deal with the closure processes? Do you leap from one thing to another because of the thrill of beginning something new? We'll become aware of some of that, and I say that's all part of our practice now, is to be taking a look at that. I know for myself, I have a hard time making changes, and I have a style around that. I'm old enough so that I can see how there's definitely been a style in my life around making changes. But one of the things that I really appreciate about it is preparation. Really anticipating that something's going to change. What are the things that I'm worried about? What are my assets? Who are my allies? What do I want to have happen? What's the image that I'm carrying? What are my expectations? All of that. So you all can do that in relation to this practice. And some of you have just very recently come to it. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes any difference at all, if it's new to you or if you've been at it a long time. So I was reading a poem. This was recommended by one of the people at this gathering, who is he's Chilean and has had a very wild life, a very wild Zen life that has taken him all over the world. But he was telling me that this was a poem he found very, very moving. So I looked it up and I thought, well, you'll see. It's a very mild kind of a approach to change. It's called, I was reading a poem by David Ruchman. I was reading a poem by Ryokan about a leaf and how it showed the front and the back as it fell. And I wanted to call someone, my wife, my brother, to tell about the poem. And I thought that maybe my telling about the poem was the front of the leaf, and my silence about the poem was the back. And then I thought that maybe my telling and my silence together were honestly just the front of the leaf, and that the back was something else, something I didn't understand. And then I thought that maybe everything I understood and everything I didn't were both actually just the front of the leaf, so that the totality of my life was actually just the front of the leaf, just the one side, which would make the other side my death, unless my life and death together were really still only the front of the leaf. I had left the branch. I was falling. I was loose now in the bright autumn air. Unusual poem. So it just traces how our questions and our conclusions and our ponderings just keep going, but meanwhile, we're all falling. And then just this. The beauty of Zen, the Zen of our life, just this. No past, no future, no change, no transition, just this. So as we work with all of the drama of transition, all of the meanings of it and the planning of it, it's still always just what it is right now. And they're both one side of the leaf, the other side of the leaf, or they're all one side of the leaf. We don't need to decide what this is. We don't have to worry that we don't understand or that we don't know. We just need to live into each moment with our open hearts and our clear attention and our interest and our vow in this practice to be of benefit. When there's conflict, we hold that question, what is the most benefit here? We don't dive into the conflict, the separation, the reactivity, it comes up. But then we always take refuge in the question, where is the best benefit here? What solution, what way is the most beneficial to everybody, to all the needs? So we have this wonderful practice of don't know mind. And we approach this transition with don't know mind. We don't know. We can't know. We can't know how this is going to work out. Nobody knows how it's going to work out. We can just live it. And the future that we spend so much energy imagining and arranging and expecting and fearing and hoping, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know how this will evolve. But we do know that it will evolve in some way. We do know that we treasure this treasure of the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, that we investigate, that we enjoy, and that we practice with. And we can each commit to really doing everything we can to nurture the ongoingness of this refuge that we all bring forth together. And the phrase that I heard over and over and over again as people were talking about their individual situations was, I trust the Dharma. And that's a phrase that we used all the time as we were bringing this center forward in all of the endless problems that have brought us here today was, well, just trust. It's going to work out one way or another. Trust it. Trust the process. Stay open. So we call this the open way. And open is another word for empty. That's what we mean when we talk about emptiness, is we don't know. And we remember that we don't know. We stay open. Creative, realistic, respectful, practical. And what we sustain in all this change is what we vow to align with, to align our development with the awakening way, with the awake mind. For the sake of all beings, to engage our practice in such a way that we support each other and are supported by the dynamic unfolding of Sangha Zen Center during this transition. So there.
Four great bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless. I vow to freedom.
Delusions are inexhaustible.
I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable.